Hello, today we are going to talk about Žarko Gajić and Delphi.about.com. So Žarko was the person that wrote articles about Delphi programming for Delphi.about.com, which was the resource, the website that you as a Delphi developer you were using in the period that he was active. So that was 1998 to 2013. So 14 years. For 14 years he wrote a large number of tutorials. So this is my thank you to Žarko Gajić for Delphi.about.com. I am a senior Delphi programmer and I have used his articles many times. So thank you. So let's look at the website, the way it looked like. Small fonts, many articles, whatever you searched on Google, Delphi space, and then some problem that you had. Very often Google took you to one of Žarko's articles. So this is, for instance, the monitoring mouse activity article. To the point, with code samples. Easy to create a test application and copy paste his code samples and see whatever is that the solution to my problem. Many of the articles also have a sample application. Unfortunately, the old Delphi.about.com was refitted and improved, and now it looks like this. So instead of having the source code in a readable format, now it's in huge fonts and with strange white spaces, and again huge fonts everywhere. I think that was one monitor full and a half. Now it's a million pages. You need to press the page down button many times. So the new version of the site is totally not appealing to me. And then when you add to this a ton of images with people which look really spammy and not professional. So if you go to Delphi.about.com, you're taken to the new version of the site, which is .co.com/Delphi programming. The articles are the same, still Žarko's articles, but then it says updated March 28, 2019, which I'm not sure how misleading or not it is, when the body of the article talks about 2009, about when Delphi added generic containers, generic collections, generics.collections unit. Delphi tutorials. huge fonts, lots to scroll through, and they've also added picture of people, which is mandatory if you are going to write any article nowadays, because that's a trend. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about the old site, which is appealing to me. Unfortunately, it's only available via archive.org and the load times are really slow in here. First time at this site, start here. Žarko Gajić is a Twitter page. So about.com has, I know, tens of thousands of articles. It also has even articles for Kylix, which was the previous version of Delphi on Linux. All sorts of articles about the programming language, about Delphi for .NET, about databases, about Microsoft's OLE, COM, DCOM, ActiveX, various ways to extend the standard controls. For instance, there's an article on putting a close button on a T-tab control. How to convert numbers currency to words. Arrays of ones, teens, tens, suffix, and source code to download. Subprogram that supports self-extracting archives. So an executable that contains a stub and a zip file, and the zip file has a content. Components Abrevia by Turbo Power. There's other alternatives to self-extracting software. The ones that I use are from the 7-zip. Handling errors and exceptions. This is about a try except. Do use begin and end around the block where you handle the exception. Division by 0. Message dialog instead of message box. Application.onException, a global exception handler. When you run with a debugger, it breaks at exceptions thrown. Exceptional exceptions. Okay, you can tell the Delphi debugger to ignore classes of exceptions. Okay. Class methods versus object methods, so statics versus instance methods. Menu info clicks, so this is the event handler for the menu item info, which creates an about box, which is probably inheriting from the form, and then it goes show model, and then it goes release. And this is a class procedure, so a static method. Show yourself, so this method is not of the an instance of the about box, not of an object, but of the type the about box. And you call it just the about box dot show yourself instead of instantiating about box and then calling the method. RTL .NET FCL. An introduction to the .NET Framework class library. Dynamic link libraries. Many of the applications created in Delphi are Windows GUI applications. They consist of just one file, the exe file, and everything is statically linked in there. The next step from there would be to have more than one file, so the executable plus Delphi DLLs. So you tell it to use runtime packages, and you give a list of units that should not be made part of the exe file, but of the Delphi DLLs. And then the next step is to actually create DLLs in Windows. We used to create those in Delphi or in C++, and then we were exporting from that DLL just a very small number of functions, like 2, which was one initialize DLL and another one call DLL. The call DLL received a XML. So you are first loading the DLL, then you are calling the exported function load DLL, and then you are calling the exported function call DLL. So this way, all of the DLLs had only C programming language style exports, which could have been used from C++ or from Delphi. And this way we were using C-style null-terminated strings for the call DLL argument, so that the XML parameter. This way we did not have problems with fastmm and Delphi strings passed through from one DLL to another. So no Delphi string was available in any of the signatures of the DLLs. It was just one parameter, which was p_char. So LP CWSTR. So null terminated, UTF-16, UCS2, Windows style. Okay. He was also presenting all sorts of external resources like third-party controls, third-party libraries, articles. Sort of review of other blog articles and magazine articles written about Delphi. Keep your code clean. Use meaningful variable and constant names. S-message and S-name for string variables. So this is Hungarian notation with a type S prefix in this case, and then the actual name of the variable or member. And I counter, such that we know that counter is an integer. Constants should be all uppercase. Okay, so that was a big thing that I did not like about Delphi. The fact that it was case insensitive. So we often had the same variable spelled in 10 different casings, random uppercase letters, and the same thing for keywords. So we started with some keywords being uppercase, and then we converted all of the source code to only use lowercase keywords for Delphi. And then we needed to do a similar thing for SQL, where we migrated all of the SQL keywords to all uppercase. Optimization on. Runtime packages. So yeah, that's the way we use them. So we started by not using runtime packages, or if we have a small number of applications, like one or two executable files. But when it makes sense, when the size of the directory where we had our application would decrease if we were using runtime packages, then yeah, we started using runtime packages. So we actually measured, we tried with runtime packages, without runtime packages, and we looked at the size of the install directory where we had our executables and DLLs. And the moment when it made sense, we started to build all of the executables and DLLs with runtime packages. So the old delphi.about.com had again a wealth of articles, all written by Žarko Gajić. Anything he could think of. There's Delphi book reviews. There's let's look at some of the articles. Hot tracking any control. when we want to highlight components when the mouse passes over them. So on mouse hover, a URL label component. How do we do that? So there's a T label, which is the normal label in Delphi, and then it implements WND proc for Win32 API messages. And there's MSG which is of type T message. And this has two parameters, the L param and the other one, the W param. And when L param is label 1, then it changes color of label 1, otherwise it changes color of label 2, label 3, or checkbox. And the change color, if it's label, then it casts the sender as T label, which is the object, and then it goes .font.color on mouse leave, and on mouse enter it makes it blue. For checkboxes it casts the object sender as the checkbox and then does the same thing as for a label. Inherited WND proc, which is override. Okay. A intranet traffic download upload monitor. There's a IP help API, which is part of the Win32 API, which is about network interface cards in Windows. How many are they? What settings do they have? Which is enabled and which is not, the order, priority between those. DelphiJedi.org, a really important suite, or two important suites of controls and third-party libraries for Delphi. So there's the JVCL and the JCL. The JCL is the Jedi third-party library, and the JVCL is the libraries with visual controls. Don't forget to download the source code. RGB color picker backup. Stealing screenshots over the network. Okay. 26-day email class. Free online database programming course for beginner Delphi developers. The ADO connection, ADO, Delphi, tables, queries. There was a newsletter for the Žarko Gajić's articles, And there's also a forum. Each article has a forum article where you could where the comments to the article would go. So it's also nice the fact that no article has comments, a comment section with not that professional comments. Enumerating web browser windows. You need to instantiate T-shell windows from #doc_view. So #doc_view is the the Windows DCOM DLL for embedding Internet Explorer's rendering engine into your application. And it seems that somebody did a wrapper, maybe even Delphi. So it might be a first-party wrapper over #doc_view. Okay, T-shell Windows, iDispatch, count, iWeb browser 2, yes. Location URL, document, for a selected web browser document, we can extract the HTML using the DOM, which is exposed as COM interfaces, classes and everything. So it's very easy to use from Delphi all of the COM, DCOM, ActiveX, OLE, Windows objects. You have static programming. You have auto-completion, what in Visual Studio would be IntelliSense. So you know each object, what members does it have, what properties, what data members, what methods, static methods, etc., which interfaces are implemented by that object, by that variable. You could put ActiveX objects on your Delphi palette and use the Delphi Forms graphical editor to put your ActiveX controls there, such as a Adobe Reader PDF reader ActiveX control. DB grid for database access, COM programming. You can take this as an email course. So free email courses for database programming and for Windows COM programming. ASP.NET using either Delphi.NET or C#. I'm not sure if he had C++ articles. Introduction to Borland Delphi. TDB grid component. BDE, the first step in your Delphi database applications, the engine from Borland Delphi. engine for databases, table data source dbgrid. We always used ADO, so ADO, never PDE. Fields editor, dbgrid. Coloring a dbgrid. Memo fields of type blob. Difficulty easy, time required 5 minutes. How to create a simple database display form. Start Delphi, file new application. Data access page in the components palette. Place the table on form. Place the data source on form. In component palette, select data controls, place a TDB grid on the form. For table 1, T-table, set the property database name to the name of the database to access to dbdemos. Table name customer.db. Data source 1. The set data set property to table 1. dbgrid set data source property to data source 1. Set the table's active property to true. Browse through the records. So this is a rapid application development, a low-code way of creating database-enabled applications. So similar to what happens in Microsoft Office Access and in HCL Domino. And in Excel, Microsoft Excel. Start Delphi, file new application. How to create a simple database display form. Copy the form from there. Open the fields editor. So it already has all of those components, so a T table, a T data source, a T DB grid, etc. And it starts from there, and then it enhances that previous previous version of the application with new things. So double click on the T table, open the fields editor. The list of fields is empty, all fields are displayed. Click on the open button, etc. How to make the enter key work like tab. Tab key moves the focus to the next control in tab order. Shift tab moves the focus to the previous tab in tab order. Most users intuitively expect the enter key to behave like a tab key. I totally do not expect such a thing. I would never press an enter key on a form. I would fear that that form will be closed by automatically pressing the accept button. So I would totally not press enter. I would always use tab and shift tab out of fear not to have a half completed form being accepted. Okay. So it has an edit box and implements the key press event. If key is \r, which is ASCII code 13. Looks at shift. Shift enter for shift enter. Why? Select next control. So shift enter goes backwards, like similar to shift tab, whereas enter goes forward, similar to tab. So when shift is pressed, it goes select next false. Otherwise it goes select next true. Which select next is part of the T-form, or one of the classes and interfaces it inherits from. Similar things to for DB grid. So maybe he went through various forums and whatever question he found interesting in there, he fixed it, and instead of posting the result to where we would put it these days on Reddit or on Stack Overflow or something, he put everything in-house in just one website, which is delphi.about.com, which is a clever thing to do. Why would you waste your replies on a million websites and not have them centralized on your website? So yeah, do reply on Stack Overflow, on Reddit, etc. But then the solution also create small blog posts on your own webpage, because that's the webpage that you control, the webpage that you can archive, backup, and you will have forever. So Delphi.net, because he keeps emphasizing ASP.NET. Delphi history from Pascal to Diamondback, Delphi 2005. So Borland Delphi is a high-level compact strongly typed language that supports structured and object-oriented design. The language in Delphi, according to Wikipedia, is called Object Pascal, so it's not based on Object Pascal, but it actually is Object Pascal. Okay. So Algol, late 60s, Niklaus Wirth, successor Pascal, 1971, implemented 73, case statement, value result parameter passing, records structures, COBOL and PL1. Dynamic data structures, what are those? Data structures that can grow and shrink while a program is running. What's that? The T-list? T-string list. Okay, so the programming language was designed to be a teaching tool for students and programming classes to use plain English words instead of, instead of open curly bracket, you have the begin word which is an English word. Instead of the close curly bracket, you have and, which is again an English word. Pascal user manual and report 1975, Wirth and Jensen. And then Wirth went on to other programming language, Modula and whatever, Ada or what he did. 3 modulas. Okay, then there was the many other Pascals, like the Apple Pascal in Apple Lisa, and Turbo Pascal 1 from Borland. Anders Heilsberg. So it came with an IDE in TUI mode, text user interface mode in the command line. You have a text editor. You can see the compiler output. You can see errors. You go to the line with by clicking on an error. One of the best-selling series of compilers of all time, mega fast, on the PC platform. So it went to, what was the last version, Turbo Pascal 7 or something. And then in 1995, it introduced a version of Turbo Pascal, but not for DOS, so not for text user interface, not for text mode, console mode, but for Windows's GUI operating system, so Microsoft Windows. To make database tools that can connect to Oracle. That's why it's called Delphi, because you go to Delphi to meet the Oracle. Connectivity is a central part of the product. Anders was the one-man band, the architect for all versions of the Turbo Pascal compiler, and the first 3 versions of Delphi, so Delphi 1, 2, 3 in 1995. He secretly turned Turbo Pascal into an object-oriented application development language, complete with a truly visual environment and superb database access, Delphi. Okay, interesting. Borland Delphi is a sophisticated Windows programming environment, self-contained, user-friendly, highly efficient Windows applications in a very short time with a minimum of amount of manual coding. And if the programming language Object Pascal, so Delphi, is not enough for you, you can always have assembler blocks. There's many third-party libraries, many first-party libraries from the IDE from Delphi. The visual component library, a hierarchy of Delphi language objects. What's also interesting about the Delphi IDE is that you have source code access to everything, to all of the objects except string, to all of the types, to everything. You don't ever have questions like what does a t-label color do? You can just navigate inside of the debugger, inside of the IDE. In the text editor, you go control click on that property and you see what exactly it does. Very, very transparent. And because the programming language requires so few lines of code, even the first party library source code is extremely concise and readable. There's not a ton of boilerplate code because the programming language is inadequate, such as in, I don't know, C++, for instance. So this is the full course for beginners for Delphi 6. Great resources. Whatever he could think of, he created an article of. And this is not just blog posts. This website is more like a wiki, because everything is there's a hierarchical structure from one article to the other. Get the line number of a selected row in a DB grid. Table 1.rec no. There's some screenshots. This is the navigator in a DB grid. Go to first record, go to last record, previous, next. Apply. How to put graphics in a cell in DB grid. Mouse wheel in DB grid. Just drop a T application events from the component palette additional tab on a form and handle on message, and then if mouse wheel, then this MSG, if high word of W param greater than 0, then up, otherwise down, handled false. Fixes the mouse wheel behavior for DB grids, T-list box, T-list view, etc. Interesting nuggets. How to enable editing T-memo fields contents using a separate window. You copy the blob and you assign it to the text of a form. Memo editor form. Great. DB grid with multi-selection. Control click. Okay, many articles, and as I said, not just throw away. Here is what I thought yesterday, but a comprehensive tree of articles, which with one referencing the other, and a sort of book, an online book with hyperlinked content. So again, this is my way of saying thank you to the author. Thank you, Žarko Gajić. Thank you.